All right, let's jump right in. We're about to take a journey into one of the most powerful, and let's be honest, one of the most misunderstood parts of being human. We are talking about vulnerability, and we're going to flip the script on it to see how it's not a weakness we should hide, but a strength we can all tap into. And this entire story kicks off with a moment of pure, unadulterated terror. So picture this. Researcher Brené Brown has just given her very first TED Talk on, you guessed it, vulnerability. She shared incredibly personal things from her research, even her own breakdown with about 500 people. Well, that talk was about to get posted on YouTube, and all she could think was, if this thing gets just a couple thousand views, my life is over. Finished. But it wasn't 1 or 2,000 views. It was over 4 million. And it happened fast. Her deepest, darkest fears were coming true, but on a scale that was just completely unimaginable. And that's when a whole new feeling took over. She actually gave it a name, the vulnerability hangover. You know that feeling, right? That pit in your stomach, that, oh my God, what did I just do feeling after you've really put yourself out there? For her, it was so bad she didn't leave her house for 3 days. She even seriously thought about trying to break into the TED offices just to steal the recording. But this crisis, this total personal meltdown, it actually became the launchpad for her next huge discovery. She had no choice but to confront the very thing she'd spent her career studying. And walking through that fire led to this massive shift in how we understand what it really, truly means to be vulnerable. And this is where things get really fascinating. There's this paradox. When we think about being vulnerable ourselves, asking for help, admitting we made a mistake, we call it weakness. But what happens when we see someone else do the exact same thing? We look at them and we think, wow, that's so brave. We call it courage. So what is up with that double standard? Well, the problem is our definition. We think of it as good or bad, but it's not. Vulnerability is simply the state of emotional risk, exposure, and uncertainty. It's that feeling you have right before you step on stage, or right before you hit send on that risky email, or say I love you for the very first time. It's not a character flaw. It's just a fundamental part of being alive. So here's the punchline. Brown concludes that vulnerability isn't the opposite of courage. In fact, it's our most accurate measurement of courage. You literally cannot have one without the other. To be brave is to be vulnerable, period. And this creates a pretty funny problem out in the real world. Once her talk went viral, all these big companies started calling her. They all wanted the same things: innovation, creativity, change. But then they'd have this one tiny request. Could you come talk to our teams, but, maybe not mention the whole vulnerability thing? But that's impossible, because vulnerability is the birthplace of all those things they want. To create something that has never existed before, that is a pure act of vulnerability. To adapt to change means you have to let go of certainty. You just can't get the fruits of courage without stepping into that arena of emotional risk. So if vulnerability is the path forward, we have to talk about the monster that guards the gate. And to do that, we have to wade into some pretty murky water, what some analysts call the swamp of the soul. We have to talk about shame. Now, first things first, and this is absolutely critical, shame and guilt are not the same thing. Guilt focuses on our behavior. It says, I did something bad. But shame focuses on ourself. It says, I am bad. Guilt is, I made a mistake. Shame whispers, I am a mistake. That distinction is everything. And here's why it matters so much. Guilt can be adaptive. It can help us fix our mistakes. But shame is just plain destructive. Research shows it's highly connected with addiction, depression, violence, suicide, you name it. Guilt, on the other hand, is actually inversely correlated with those things. It can point us in a healthier direction. And shame has this brutal 1-2 punch it uses to keep us down. The first punch is, you are not good enough. It just lists off all your failures and insecurities. But if by some miracle of courage you manage to push past that, it hits you with a second punch. Who do you think you are? It's a system designed to keep you small and keep you quiet. And this experience often gets shaped by gender. For women, shame is like this tangled web of conflicting, impossible expectations. Be a perfect professional, a perfect mother, a perfect partner. Do it all, do it flawlessly, and never ever let them see you struggle. For men, it's simpler but just as brutal. It's one core rule. Do not be perceived as weak. So if shame is this toxic, universal emotion that just thrives in the dark, What's the solution? What's the antidote? Well, thankfully, it's something every single one of us is capable of. It's empathy. Think of shame like some kind of organism in a petri dish. For it to grow like crazy, it just needs three things: secrecy, silence, and judgment. When we keep our struggles locked away, isolated, and afraid of what people will think, shame just flourishes. But if you take that same shame and just douse it with empathy, it cannot survive. And the most powerful form of empathy can be delivered in just two words: me too. Those words instantly shatter the secrecy, the silence, and the judgment that shame feeds on. They build an instant bridge of connection right over that swamp of the soul. And that brings us to the final, most important step. Because it's not enough to just understand this stuff. We have to act on it. We have to answer the call to courage and actually dare to step into the arena. You know, Brené Brown realized that a place like TED isn't really a conference of success. It's a conference of failure. Every great innovator, every creator, every leader who gets up on that stage has failed, often spectacularly. Success isn't about avoiding failure, it's about having the guts to fail and get back up again. And this perfectly captures a quote from Theodore Roosevelt that she said saved her during that really tough year. It's not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who tries and fails, but who does it all with courage. And that really gets to the heart of it all. The goal isn't to win. It's not to be perfect or to avoid getting knocked down. The true victory is simply having the courage to show up and be seen in the first place. Which really leaves us with a question for ourselves. It is so tempting to wait on the sidelines, isn't it? To think, I'll step into my arena when I'm perfect, when I'm bulletproof, when I know I can't fail. But that day never comes. So are you letting the fear of not being good enough keep you out of the game? Because the ultimate truth is this: when we finally enter that arena, terrified and maybe even stumbling, what we're offering is our real selves. And what the world is so desperate for, what we all want to see in each other, isn't perfection, it's you.